Okay, so for Unit 3.01, um, this whole section is going to be about talking about where you live, what's in the area, what there is to do, things like that. So there's a bunch of vocabulary. We're starting to get into some of the vocabulary heavy units. And I will attach the slideshow that has all of the vocab, but we've done a bunch of them. Live, it's two A's. You'll sometimes see it with L's. Don't do it with L's. Do it with A's. Live. Here. It's kind of like what, but as opposed to a question, it's here, this area. Near. So if the two hands are coming close together, near. It's a little hard to see on the two-dimensional of the screen, but near. Downtown. Downtown is actually the same sign as city, and you take the hands, kind of the flat hands, like blade hands, and you're making little houses. Sometimes you'll see it like this. Sometimes you'll see it alternating. Sometimes you'll see it just as kind of swishes by like that. So you're not going to. I'm getting. Okay, I think that's better. Getting kind of lens flares. I feel like J.J. Abrams. So we use this for both city and downtown. So it's the city within the city. We'll talk about neighborhoods within a city. So you might live in the downtown area of Kent. You might live out in a farm area. Farm is you take the 5 hand and you draw the thumb underneath your jawline. Water, take the W and just tap it on where your soul pitch would be, just right there on your chin button. Okay, that's water. Yeah, I know it's got a W, but that's one of the sort of legacy signs. Park. Park, we oftentimes will use like, if we're talking about a park, like a national park, trees. So here's a tree, and just twist it like that so it looks like a tree. And if you place them like in a row or place a bunch of them here, it's a park. And you can also use area, which is just show where that area is. So tree area, it could be a play area. Right? So this, we'll use area, and that's down a couple of entries with a lot of these signs. Hills. Just use your hands to show the hills. Hills. Right. And then area, as we said, it could be parking area or cars. So car. And just 1, 2, car area. Parking, that looks like a car in ASL. So, and you hit that on the flat of your hand. Parking area. Could be school area. Store area. Shopping district. Shopping mall, M-A-L-L. Fingerspell it, and it goes mall. Mall. M-A-L-L. Don't worry, you'll get there once you feel comfortable. M-A-L-L. M-A, and remember, the double letters kind of slide, so M-A-L-L. Mall. Mall. Shopping mall, or shopping area. That works as well. Residential and deaf school. We know school, and I believe we may have already touched on what deaf school, residential school would be. And it's using 2 I's and signing school. Usually that comes from the idea that most of the state schools for the deaf were called Institute for the Deaf, New York State Institute for the Deaf, Ohio School for the Deaf, that kind of thing. So we would use this as school. I know it starts with an I, but it became a very, very important sign in deaf culture because that was how deaf people connected with each other and sort of found their roots. And I guess that's all I want to talk about right now, but that schools for the deaf will become really important. And if you're interested in education and educational changes, the popularity of schools for the deaf have grew very strongly and have in the last couple decades dropped down. Many of them are having to close because no one so many parents don't want their kids sent far away. They want them close to home. So, this is really not helping all that much, but okay. So anyway, now we get directions. So just the same as if you have a compass from a map right in front of you, north is the letter N, drag it north. South is S down. East is to your right. So if you're left-handed, east would be this way. And west goes to the left. Okay, so we always go north, south, east, west. North, south, east, west. Right. So east and west will change depending if you're left-handed or right-handed. We said city. City is the same as downtown. City. Now we get to name signs. The book will give you Berkeley, Berkeley, Oakland, think it's Fremont, and San Francisco. Why they give California signs is still kind of a mystery to me, because I think once in the last 10 years I've referred to Berkeley, California, and that was about a friend, and it didn't matter that Berkeley's sign was Berkeley. I would recommend learning local signs that have to do with around Kent. If you are currently in a different city, taking a look at what those signs are would be much more worth it as you're meeting the deaf population. But if you're going to meet people in Kent or around Cleveland, it's much better to learn the signs for your area. And I won't go over a lot of the smaller towns. We can look them up and we can get them. But like the sign for Massillon, which is a town or a small city near Kent, is they do it. It's a lion. Their mascot is a lion, so it's Massillon. But I don't think in 4 years you will ever discuss Massillon in context unless you're out and then someone will fingerspell it to you. So we don't have time to learn every sign for every city in the United States. So let's pick the ones that are most important. This is the slide that'll have them. So Cleveland, it's a C, and it goes from opposite side to same side, Cleveland. You'll sometimes see it the other way around. Most of the time it's just opposite to far to close. For me, it's left to right. If you're left-handed, it would be right to left. So Cleveland. It's also the sign for Congress. Don't know why. Congress at any level. There's Columbus, which is just wave a C. Columbus. New York City. Take a Y and go back and forth across the palm of your hand. New York. It kind of comes from the train, the subway, but keep it up on top. Don't do it underneath. New Yorkers don't like that. Pittsburgh. You'll actually see it two different ways, Pittsburgh or Pittsburgh. Most of the people from Pittsburgh I know do it across, but we also see here. The sign for Maine, the state of Maine, is also this. So, but again, New England, the Midwest, we don't talk about Maine that often. So there's not much confusion with this. Washington, D.C. You take the W, and you're going to touch your shoulder and then kind of loop it out. Washington, D.C. So Washington State, Washington, D.C. Okay, so Washington, D.C. We're Gallaudet. There was one slide on the previous one that we skipped over, and it's over there. And I want to use it as like here, over there. Here, over there, right? So near and far. Here, over there. Could be over there, or it could be far. So I just realized we skipped one. Buffalo. Here are the horns of the buffalo, and you wave it. Buffalo. Cincinnati, C-I-N-N, Sin City, not really. Cincinnati. I've seen some people fingerspell Cincy, but most of the time I just see Sin. Wait, if I think about it, I can't do it. Sin. C-I-N-N. C-I, and then drag the N's across. Sin. So CI, and then it drags to the outside. Sin. Akron. It's like you're shaving. This is the sign for rubber. During World War II, Akron was a huge producer of tires and anything that had to do with rubber for the war industry. The Goodyear, Goodrich, Firestone, all of them were out of Akron. And when the soldiers left, all the jobs that had been occupied by the young, able-bodied men, women came in and worked, and deaf people, anybody who had a disability or who was old but could still work, got those jobs, which was great because it showed the employers that deaf people could work, deaf people could be employed. It wasn't just, the able-bodied guys who could do stuff. Unfortunately, well, same thing with women, right? At the time, women you stayed at home. And Rosie the Riveter was a big move to show that women could be an important part of the workforce. And then, of course, after World War II, sorry guys, sorry deaf people, sorry women, you're gone. Let the guys come back to their jobs. So deaf people benefited and then kind of got sidelined, as is always the case, right? Everybody who proves themselves then gets booted back off. Anyway, so Akron is the sign for rubber. Youngstown is a Y, and you just kind of bounce it. It's kind of like we showed OIC. OIC, right? So Youngstown. It's not a very exciting sign. Sorry if you're from Youngstown. It's not a very exciting city. Youngstown. That. Rochester, Detroit, Chicago, and Toledo. I have them in blue because they're basically all the same sign. Like we did with colors where there's a bunch of generic ones. Same thing applies to these. Rochester, it's an R in like the shape of a 7, a right angle. Right. Rochester, Detroit, Chicago, Toledo. You'll notice that this is a generic sign for location. Texas is signed like this. So those are the most important signs that you can learn, or for city names. Now, bodies of water, it depends on size. So we've got water, right? We have that for if you do water flowing, it's a river. Water, tiny area, a pond. Water, bigger area, it's a lake. Water, ocean, okay, or sea. Water, tiny little, it's a creek. Waterfalls. So you're going to preface it with W for water, right? You're going to preface it with the sign water, and then generally just show the shape of what it looks like. Shopping areas. These are all things that to keep in mind of what's near you. If you were asked, well, tell me about where you live, what would you talk about? Are there schools, high school, middle school, elementary school? Is there a college? School for the deaf nearby? Are there shopping areas? Shopping store. This is the generic sign for store. Parks. Landmark is anything you might have to spell. Maybe the statue. Called progress. And then the compass points, north, south, east, and west. So think about how you normally talk about the town you came from. What's around it, how you let people know, oh, well, it's like 5 miles from Kent. One of the things I want to just quickly say in here is that in ASL, we generally don't talk about miles. We'll talk about time. So we won't talk about 5 miles from here. We'll talk about 5 minutes, a 5-minute drive, a 5-minute walk, 10-minute, bike ride. Time is much more important, much more relevant. I think it's mainly because that is an arbitrary length of time where we manipulate space so much in sign that this could be 5 miles or this could be 1,000 miles. So the concept of mile isn't as important in ASL as the concept of time is. Mountains. First, the sign for rock or hard, right? So boom, and then you show the mountain. Here's the slope, or mountain. So you can show the shape. If you're at the foot of a mountain, or if you're talking about mountain, boom, boom, the Himalayas. We talked about hills, right? Could be one, could be a series of hills. Desert is dry. So you're going to take your little, well, it starts out index finger and then it becomes an X and dry. So you wipe the moisture out of your mouth. Dry. Desert area, dry area, sandy. Forest, and you can use both hands. So trees. Large and small. Now, we talked a little bit early on about 3 different sizes. There's large, there's small, and there's just right. So it's a whole 3 bears concept of how things are in size. Something's larger than, something's smaller than, and something just about right. So we could have a large forest, and our facial expression as we sign forest would look big. And near and far. Again, we have that small face, it's nearby, or and sometimes you'll see far with 2 A's, kind of like you're measuring the space. So here are some examples of ways that you could describe Cleveland. It's north. I didn't put that on here. I should, but it's north of Kent. In the middle, in Cleveland, the sign for the flats tended to be this, the flats. But or people would say downtown. Really, it's where the bars used to be. That's all been sort of stripped down, and they're putting up condos and very expensive housing. You could talk about some specific things like the West Side Market. So think about the things in your hometown that are significant and figure out how you could describe them. Kent, there's no sign for Kent, Kent, unfortunately. We have the downtown. KSU's over here. Store area, Acme, right? They're the train tracks that run through town, and we use this for train. So if you've got railroad ties and the railroad tracks, it also can sound like a train, right? So train. Loud. Or on campus, we'll usually use this, or college ground. Ground is kind of weird because we're not really talking about the dirt. So area is better. That college area, KSU area. And oftentimes people use this for campus, sign for the deaf school, but meaning the school itself. So I want you to think about, how would you describe your town, where you're from? And how do you already do it? So just go from that. Don't worry about, learn the signs you need. Don't try to learn new concepts of how to describe your town. We often go from biggest to smallest, right? Huge details to fine details. You don't say, the one with the 7-Eleven on the corner, that's my hometown, right? You're going to say, oh, yeah, I live about 15 minutes north of Columbus. Small town, live what neighborhood? What area do you live? Do you live in, does it have a name? Like Lakewood, is it its own city? Tremont in Cleveland is actually one area of Cleveland. And then think about how to get closer. Is there a museum there? Is there some national park that's famous? People would know. So think about how you help people find it. Or if you just say middle of nowhere, so in the middle, and then if you do this, it's like it's empty, it's naked, kind of like we do for forget or. Cool. So this is the goal, is to be able to have this conversation. Ask someone where you live, where, and you'll see this in the conversation that will be posted, that's in here embedded. Remember the WH word ends the sentence, right? If you know where it is in relation to where you are at the moment, pointing in that direction really helps. If you know that Akron is that way from where I am right now. 20 minutes, 5 minutes that way. That helps. If we're talking on a grand scale, where is Chicago and you don't know, that's fine. Chicago, how far is it? You can set it up wherever you want. And then you can get narrower and narrower as people ask you questions. You can also add, I grew up there, or my family moved, so we picked up and moved. Okay. So lots of different things that you could kind of add. Think about the conversations you've had when introducing yourself to someone. And those all are things that you should be able to sign right now. I mean, the whole point is we're trying to get you to be able to flirt with, I don't know, hot deaf people that you meet. I don't know. Getting you to be able to have a conversation, just a simple conversation about life stuff, the same stuff you normally talk about. So here is the first conversation where the two of them are going to talk about the places where they live and describing things. And again, I put in the paragraph, the more information that you can be specific about, the better. We're on campus talking about buildings on campus. Pointing in that direction really helps if you know where it is. If you don't know where it is, you can be arbitrary. But it helps sort of place us. And I put the gloss of what they're signing. It's just a general idea so you can practice. And you can see that he says, oh, I live in San Francisco, and it's to the right and it's far to the left for him, but you know what I mean, right? So he signs it. So this should match up perfectly with what they're signing. So then she talks about where she lives and what's around her. And this is an example of him giving a specific direction. He also looks like he says, oh, I'm over there. I live over there. It helps to make that reference. If you're talking about someone, make a reference to the person. Right? So set them up in space. If you just do this while just looking at the person, it can be really disconcerting. But it helps if you go, over there. Yeah, my car is over there. Yeah, even if you can't see it. And then there's mini dialogue. They're going to talk about who lives in Berkeley, who lives in Fremont, who lives in Oakland. Again, signs you're never going to need. But I just want you to watch the video and kind of get the gist of what's going on and how they're describing. So if it's kind of weird, I wish that we reversed this. I wish I had this graphic turned around. But if I'm here, I have to my right and to my left, and I have in between me and the person we're talking to. Actually, if I could change this graphic, and I'm no none art. I would move the center right between the left and the right, because when I set up to the right, that could be your left. I set to my left, that could be your right. We use these spaces together as we set up things. Because if I set up my work is here, you would point to that to refer to work. You're pointing to the same space. And then I could do behind me, far, far. But this just gives a general idea. If you are going to practicing practicing for a video, if you think of where a friend lives or where you live or where you work, try to figure out where you want to place them beforehand so that it becomes easier. Oh, well, I know this is here and I know this is here. And real world geography may help with that. So this is just this helps for some students to be able to write that stuff down in like a grid. You can also just write the information down. Once again, all the vocab is right there. And then I included all of the videos from there. I'll make sure to put in the chapter from the book. These videos will be on Blackboard, and then any other forms I've got, worksheets and stuff like that. Cool. That is